All right, everyone, welcome back to the land of Chem. I am your host and the author. My name is Jeffrey Drum. Thank you all so much for joining me again. So before we get started on today's episode, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to all of the new subscribers here on the Land of Chem YouTube channel. It has been absolutely amazing to see this channel finally start growing over the past couple of weeks. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate all of the likes, comments, new subscriptions, and everybody's overwhelmingly positive support for my videos, my research, my theories, and for the book. So thank you so much for your continued support. I do this for you, and it's a really, really cool feeling to see that everybody's enjoying the videos. So again, just stay tuned here on the Land of Chem YouTube channel. There's a lot more coming up very soon. So today's episode, episode 14, The Land of Chem, September 2021 Research Expedition Recap Part 2, covering the structures of the Faiyum Oasis. So in today's video, I will be, of course, presenting some exclusive videos from all of these sites, and we're going to start off with the Pyramid of Hawara and the mysterious labyrinth. Yes, indeed, I did say the labyrinth of Hawara. Our next step on today's expedition is going to be the Pyramid of Lahun, and I'm also going to be presenting some photos of the most exceptional precision stonework that I have seen in all of my tours across Egypt. And last but not least, we're going to be covering the Pyramid of Meidum and discussing the connections between that structure and the function of the Red Pyramid. And last but not least, we are going to take a journey inside of Mastaba 17 to prove once and for all that the smell and the staining inside of the Red Pyramid is not caused by bats. I'm going to have a lot of exclusive photos and videos in today's presentation. I really hope you enjoy the material. So without further ado, let's get right to it. All right, the first stop on today's journey will be an expedition to the Pyramid of Hawara and an exploration of the mysterious labyrinth that we find here on the south side of the structure. So in these first couple of pictures, this just shows what the Pyramid of Hawara looks like today, and you can see that there is not much that remains of the original structure. So just keep in mind that the Pyramid of Hawara was originally a conventional pyramid. However, all of the original white limestone casing that formed the body of the original pyramid has completely been removed, and what we find remaining today is a partial mound of mud bricks. However, do not be deceived by what is remaining of the original body of the structure. What is buried inside of the Pyramid of Hawara and what we find here on the south side of the structure is absolutely fascinating. And here's a diagram showing the components and configuration of the Pyramid of Hawara here on the right. And on the left, you can see an incomplete representation of that labyrinth found on the south side of the structure. And one thing I wanted to point out, as I mentioned in the previous slide, don't be fooled by the relatively simple mud brick that was utilized in the construction of the body of the pyramid itself. The internal components of this structure are incredibly sophisticated, and they utilize the same megalithic limestone construction that was employed in all the rest of the pyramid. So again, don't be fooled by the relatively simple exterior. There is some very sophisticated engineering and construction that went into design of the central chambers, and we'll get to that here in just a moment. And here in the next few slides, we're going to see some depictions of what the Labyrinth of Hawara could have possibly looked like in its original condition. And you can see here that the labyrinth itself was an absolutely immense structure, and it carried over onto both sides of the canal that runs through here at the site of Hawara. Now, the Greek historians that describe this structure depict it as being a multi-level maze that was composed of hallways, passages, courtyards, and chambers. And the chamber count ranges anywhere from 300 chambers up to 3,000 chambers. And here is a fantastic depiction of the Labyrinth of Hawara that was made by Athanasius Kircher and was taken from a copper plate engraving. Of course, you may recognize that name for his prolific work in regard to alchemy. So of course, there's always a connection between these ancient structures and chemistry. And you can see here around the outside of this copper plate engraving all of the Egyptian deities that surrounded the labyrinth itself. And within the labyrinth, there are all kinds of symbols. Of course, there's alchemical symbols, there's astrological symbols, and a complex maze, again, described by Greek historian Herodotus as a multi-level structure with possibly up to 3,000 chambers. And the more that you examine the rubble field, the size of the rubble field, and the configuration that's proposed by these ancient historians, I'm more and more inclined to believe that it was indeed 3,000 chambers. And again, to conceive of the original function of this structure is a pretty mind-blowing task. And this is a picture of what the labyrinth of Hawara looks like today. And you can see this rubble field is absolutely immense. So just try to imagine how big the structure was originally. And it wasn't just above ground. This was a levels underground. And you can see here all of these little mounds. These are from ancient excavation or tomb raids where they went through and dug up all these chambers and left just all sorts of rubble strewn about this entire field. And underneath these piles, you can still see that there are chambers buried underneath these piles that to this day have not been excavated. So it's a very fascinating site to visit. And as you're walking around this rubble field, you can't help but imagine what is still buried underneath your feet. It is really, really amazing. So as I mentioned in the previous slides, this site is actually split into two areas, one here on this side of the canal and one here on the other side of the canal. And it is proposed that there are underground tunnels that connect these two sites. So again, very, very complicated and fascinating site. And here are some pictures of the labyrinth or the remains thereof from the other side of the canal. And you can see here the massive limestone blocks that look like it would have been an entrance to this side of the site. Now, one other thing I wanted to point out, of course, the deposits of iron oxide that are found all over these ancient sites. And here in the Faiyum Oasis particularly, these deposits of iron oxide are extremely metallic. These are like bars of iron that are embedded into this limestone. And I just want to continue to point these out because they are incredibly prevalent all across these ancient sites in Egypt. And here's another amazing depiction of the Pyramid of Hawara and the labyrinth found on the south side of the structure that was originally described by Greek historian Herodotus. Of course, I do have some theories in regard to this structure that relate directly to the science of ancient chemistry. However, there is absolutely nothing that remains of this labyrinth today. And unfortunately, the interior components of the Pyramid of Hawara have been completely flooded. So there is no way to examine or research this structure to be able to develop a concrete theory regarding its operation. So at this point, that will just have to remain a mystery. But I will say that we had an absolutely fantastic day examining this site. And again, it's really mind-blowing to try to envision what still remains buried underneath all of this sand, because to this day, this site has not been fully excavated. And here is a diagram showing the interior components of the Pyramid of Hawara. And you can see that these shafts and chambers have been flooded since back in the late 1800s, starting here in 1898. And that has continued to worsen until the most recent survey here in 2004. So my last trip to Egypt in November in 2020, we did get them to open up the metal gate here on the outside of this shaft, and we got a look down into this passageway. However, there was not much to see except for a bunch of muddy water. However, there is some very, very sophisticated construction that is inside of the Pyramid of Hawara. And this is a diagram showing the central chamber of that pyramid. And the most important thing I wanted to point out is the geology that was utilized in the construction of this container. So this container is composed of massive slabs of transparent yellow quartzite, which is a very, very unique type of geology that is not utilized anywhere else in any of the other Egyptian pyramids or structures throughout Egypt. So I just wanted to point that out. Again, as I mentioned at the very beginning discussing this structure, that the mud brick around the outside of the structure is not representative whatsoever of what we find inside of the pyramid. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so again, the Pyramid of Hawara. And here is the area of the labyrinth. Yes, I said labyrinth. And this was a multi-level structure with more than 300 chambers that was documented by Greek historians Herodotus, etc. There have been reports up to 3,000 chambers. I think it's more realistically 300 chambers. And you can see all of these mounds here that have been excavated in the ancient time. But this whole area was a complex labyrinth, again, a multi-level structure with hundreds and hundreds of chambers that ran underground. Very, very interesting site here in the Faiyum Oasis. And next up on our expedition to the Faiyum Oasis was an exploration of the Pyramid of Lahun. And you can see here, again, the configuration and components of the structure. And we are going to be taking a journey into this subterranean shaft system here and into the central chamber of the Pyramid of Lahun, in which we find the most exceptional piece of stonework that I have ever seen throughout all of my expeditions to Egypt. And here are some pictures of what the Pyramid of El Lahun looks like today. And you can see that the body of the pyramid itself is gone. All of the original white limestone casing stones have been removed. And what remains is the interior composed of mud brick. However, you can see here on the right that that mud brick is on top of a core of megalithic limestone blocks. So again, don't be fooled by the simple mud bricks. These structures are very sophisticated in terms of the construction and what you find underneath. All right, and as we began to explore the site surrounding the Pyramid of El Lahun, I immediately noticed that the natural limestone in this area is extremely high in iron oxide content. So you can see these huge pieces of bedrock that are strewn about the site with that reddish-brown iron oxide coloring. And here on the left, you can see what looks to be a huge blob of metal. And that's pretty much exactly what it is. This is a very large deposit of iron oxide. And as I mentioned before, at the Pyramid of Hawara, for whatever reason, the deposits at these locations are pretty much metallic iron. Again, this is like a blob of metal here in the sand. So a very, very unusual feature that we found here at the Pyramid of El Lahun. And this is a diagram of the subterranean system found below the Pyramid of El Lahun. And we're going to be taking an exclusive video journey inside of this system here in just a moment. But long story short, these shafts lead to a system of tunnels, and the tunnel system leads to the central chamber. Now, inside of this central chamber, you will find the most exceptional piece of precision ancient stone masonry that I have found in all of my site tours across Egypt. This thing is absolutely amazing, and it is beyond comparison in terms of the precision of this container. So these are a couple of photos showing our journey into the subterranean system. Again, there's a massive shaft that takes you down to a subterranean tunnel system. And this subterranean tunnel leads toward that central chamber. And inside of this central chamber, ladies and gentlemen, this is an example of precision ancient stone masonry. So in my previous video, I mentioned the containers of the Serapeum and how I do not believe that those are examples of precision ancient stone masonry. And that is simply in comparison to artifacts like this. This, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely precision stone masonry, and it is by far the most exceptional example of stonework that I have found in all my tours of Egypt. The quality of the masonry on this artifact is absolutely mind-blowing, and it vastly surpasses anything that is found in the Serapeum. They are not even close to being on the same level. So do I think that the engineering and stone masonry on the boxes at the Serapeum are impressive? Yes. Are they quote-unquote precision for ancient stonework? Yes. Are they as precise as this? Absolutely not. Again, this thing is on a completely different level, and I'll show a couple of pictures of this container in detail in just a moment. And here's a quick experiment that we did on the alignment of this container found underneath the Pyramid of Lahun. And you can see that this thing is lined up dead north-south. And we did the same experiment in the Serapeum on the containers inside of that structure, and we found the exact same results. These containers are aligned dead north and south with a level of precision that is absolutely mind-blowing. So the question remains, how did they align these containers when they are buried deep underground? And here are a couple of close-up pictures showing the inside of that red granite container found underneath the Pyramid of Lahun. And you can see here the level of accuracy on this stone masonry is absolutely mind-blowing. And in my opinion, this is by far the most exceptional example of precision stonework that exists in situ in Egypt. And again, it vastly surpasses anything that you find in the Serapeum of Saqqara. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are in the chamber underneath the Pyramid of Lahun. And you'll see here, not a single inscription on the walls, no hieroglyphs. Pretty unusual for a pharaonic burial structure that there is not a single evidence. And these are restored walls, I believe. Is that correct, Yusuf? These are restored, correct?
Yes, these are restorations, the ones in the ceiling.
Yeah, so the white plaster here, this is restoration to the structure. And last time we were here, we actually got a personal tour by the archaeologists on the site that had been excavating all of these shafts. But as we move here into the central chamber, this is original red granite. And look at the curvature on the top of this chamber. This is gorgeous. And this is one of, if not the most exceptional piece of masonry that we found inside these structures. I mean, the accuracy on this box, container, whatever you'd like to call it, is exceptional. And I'll be showing some of the measurements and angles of this thing.
Yeah.
But it's also not level. You'll notice here, if I step back from this, so we're at ground level, and this thing, I believe, is tilted at a 15-degree angle, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to confirm that here in just a moment. But again, the red granite container and the red granite chamber underneath the Pyramid of Lahun. Stay tuned, guys. Lots more coming up here on the Land of Chem. All right, the last stop on our expedition to the Faiyum Oasis was an exploration of the Pyramid of Meidum, and you can see a couple of pictures of what this structure looks like today. So here in the core of the pyramid, you will see this stepped tower structure that originally composed the core of the pyramid, which was surrounded by smaller limestone blocks, and then those limestone blocks were encased in white limestone, creating your traditional pyramid shape, and you'll see that here in this diagram. All right, this is a very unique and unusual diagram of the Pyramid of Meidum, and there's a couple of things that I wanted to point out here in this image. So the first thing is the original core of the pyramid that I showed in the previous slide. So you can see here this stepped tower structure that made up the original core of the pyramid, which was surrounded by limestone blocks and then encased in white limestone, forming the shape of the traditional pyramid. Now, according to the conventional timeline, the Pyramid of Meidum was constructed by the pharaoh Seneferu, who was also responsible for the red and bent pyramids of Dashur. And the conventional story goes is that the pharaoh Seneferu started in the Faiyum Oasis with the construction of the Pyramid of Meidum. However, there were some construction issues with this structure, and the exterior of the pyramid collapsed, leaving the remains of what we have today. So the project was completely abandoned, and the pharaoh relocated his construction efforts to Dashur with the bent pyramid and then finally the red pyramid. However, I believe that there is a different explanation for this structure, and it relates directly to the function of the red pyramid. So let's start with an analyzation of the interior components of this structure. So you can see here this northern shaft that leads down into your central chamber. Now today, this is the only shaft that can be utilized to access this central chamber, and to my knowledge, this is the only chamber inside of this entire structure. However, you can see here on this diagram that there are two other chambers that are depicted, and this is very, very unusual because, again, to my knowledge, to our guide's knowledge, to all of the conventional history books, these chambers do not exist, but I find them very, very interesting because any of you that are familiar with my work and the configuration of the red pyramid will immediately recognize the configuration of these chambers is exactly the same as the northern pump shaft, the primary steam reformer, and secondary air reformer of the red pyramid. So I'm just going to keep those in mind. They are not included on any of the other diagrams, so they're going to be excluded from the discussion, but I do want to point those out because they are relevant in regard to this structure's connection to the function of the red pyramid. All right, this diagram shows the conventionally accepted interior configuration of the Pyramid of Meidum. And let's just take a moment to connect this structure to the red pyramid. So let's say, for example, that the Pyramid of Meidum was possibly a test structure that was utilized to demonstrate the physics and chemistry that were eventually going to be implemented inside the red pyramid. So within the red pyramid, you have this same northern pump shaft, the northern pump shaft leading down into your primary reaction chamber. So within the primary reaction chamber of the red pyramid, it was utilized to transform methane gas into carbon monoxide and hydrogen. So let's again say, for example, that the Pyramid of Meidum was a test structure utilized to demonstrate those concepts. The reaction chamber within this pyramid would be incredibly useful considering those two products. And here are some amazing photos from our expedition inside the Pyramid of Meidum. So when we began to enter the structure, all of the lights were not working. So we had to journey inside of this pyramid in the dark. So you can see here on the left is a picture of that northern pump shaft descending into the primary chamber. And this photo on the right is a photo of the upper vault of that primary reaction chamber inside of the structure. Now, eventually they did get the lights turned on and working again, which we were very happy about. And you can see here the shaft system leading up to the primary reaction chamber. Again, you take a series of ladders from that descending pump shaft up into this primary reaction chamber. And here are just a few more photos of that chamber itself. Now, there's several things that I want to discuss in regard to the configuration of this chamber, and I'm going to be doing that in a later video that will be exclusively dedicated to the function of the Pyramid of Meidum. But I just wanted to introduce this real quick. Again, here's some pictures of that northern pump shaft with the lights turned on. Again, a very interesting structure, a lot to be learned about this particular pyramid. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are inside the, well, I don't want to call it the primary or central chamber because it's the only known of chamber inside the Pyramid of Meidum. And again, you'll notice the similarities between the configuration of this structure and this chamber and the primary reaction chamber inside of the Red Pyramid of Dashur. And we'll be getting to that. And I apologize for the flashlights, but the lights are out here. I didn't pay the electricity bill in Meidum this past month. But nonetheless, I think you can get an idea of what it's like inside here. And that's the upper vault of the chamber. And this is the shaft system that leads up into the reaction chamber. This is where we just came from. Shine a light down in here if you would, for me, please. Shukran. There we go. Awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, one of my favorite structures to explore in all of Egypt, Mastaba 17 at the Pyramid of Meidum. And this is an absolutely amazing structure, and I'm going to be showing some exclusive videos of exactly what it's like to get in and out of this structure, which is no small task. And our entire reason for taking the journey inside of this structure was to prove once and for all that the smell and the staining inside of the Red Pyramid is not produced by bats. And you'll see here in just a moment exactly what it's like to journey inside of this structure. And underneath of this mastaba is a relatively small chamber. And you can see Yusuf standing here examining the container that is found inside of this chamber. But the main reason we went down here is because of the bats. And this is the second time that I've been inside of Mastaba 17. And you can see here that there are plenty of bats inside of this chamber. Well, one thing that you will not see is any staining on the walls. There is not a single drip of any sort or any staining on any of the walls inside of this chamber. And there are plenty of bats in here. There were bats in November of 2020, and there were bats in September of 2021. There is also absolutely no smell of ammonia whatsoever inside of this chamber. And again, this is a very difficult chamber to access. There is absolutely no airflow inside of this chamber. And again, you can see here, not a single stain on any of the walls. And you would think that if the staining inside of the Red Pyramid was caused by bats, there would be at least one drip stain or something inside of this chamber that indicates that the staining could have possibly be caused by these bats. However, that is absolutely not the case, and there is zero smell of ammonia inside of this structure. Case closed. End of story. The smell inside of the Red Pyramid is absolutely not caused by bats. The smell of ammonia is due to the production of that chemical inside of the final synthesis chamber inside of the pyramid. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go.
Hey, you can see there's more of that length here. Jeffrey? Look, there's
Oh
more
yeah,
of that
yeah,
length.
the layer. So it is natural.
I cannot think that they stuck that up.
Yeah.
Had to be natural. And before they built it on top of it. What?
All right. And so this shaft is all of, well, maybe 2-3 feet high. crawling into the belly of the structure.
And this is the two-way of the entrance.
Yeah. Again, when we were in here last time, I don't remember there being any lights, so the lights are a nice addition.
Yeah, the last time it was dark.
And so bear with me for 1 sec, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to have to change gears here, and this is where we are heading. We'll be back in 1 sec.
Imagine there's a bunch of gold and you will live happily ever after.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Yeah.
But a lot of these guys were sorely disappointed when they didn't find anything. And then, so we're down here at the bottom of the ladder, crawling into this portion of the shaft. Again, this was excavated by tomb raiders. Whew. And again, this is about, I don't know, maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet high. So you gotta get down on your belly. Crawl into this thing. Again, here, just to give you some perspective, this is my hand, and this is the size of the hole that my entire body is about to crawl through. And again, very glad that this time they have the lights turned on, because last time I was in there, it was completely dark inside of this chamber. And we can watch Yusuf as he comes through the birth canal there. There, it's a boy.
Yeah.
All right, so one of the reasons that we wanted to come down inside here, again, you can see the bats and you can hear them. However, there is no smell of ammonia in this chamber, and there is no staining on the walls whatsoever. So
strange.
this is conclusive proof that the smell and the staining inside of the Red Pyramid was absolutely not caused by bats. End of story. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have wrapped up here at M17, Mastaba 17 at the Pyramid of Meidum, again proving that the staining and smell inside of the Red Pyramid is conclusively not proved by bats. And here we go back through this tiny little hole to begin our ascent back to the surface. Yusuf, thank you so much for bringing me inside here. It's always a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Here we go.
Go ahead.
Okay. Here we go. Oh. Here's a nice little spot of that halite as you're going up the stairs on the left here, Yusuf.
Salty glaze?
Yep, right here.
Yeah.
And actually a lot of this is crystallized halite in here.
Good.
Oh. And I'll take that so you don't gotta hear it anymore. Thank you, sir. Shukran. And just a quick reminder that limited first edition print copies of The Land of Chem are now available. So if you want to help support the channel, just go to thelandofchem.com. You can pick up a t-shirt, grab a copy of the book. It really means a lot to me. So I just want to say thank you so much in advance. All right, everyone, that is it for today's video. This was episode 14, The Land of Chem 2021 Research Expedition Recap Part 2, covering the structures of the Faiyum Oasis. I really hope you enjoyed the material in today's video. And in the next episode, we are going to be traveling to Dashur to explore the red and bent pyramids. And I'm going to be presenting my new research from each one of those structures individually, because there's a ton of new material to cover. And I want to do a thorough review of the chemical operations that were occurring at each one of those locations, including the original reactants, the reactant sequence, the product, et cetera, so we can all get brought up to speed regarding the function of those two magnificent structures. So of course, thank you to all of the new subscribers here on the Land of Chem YouTube channel. If you liked the video, definitely leave it a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Land of Chem YouTube channel. Definitely leave me a comment if you have any questions, suggestions, whatever it might be. I've really enjoyed interacting with everyone in the comments section, and it helps to get this material out into the algorithm. So I really appreciate it. So if you haven't already, follow me on Instagram at The Land of Chem. Of course, the website is www.thelandofchem.com if you want to pick up the book and help support the channel. It really means a lot to me. And I think that's it for today's video. So without further ado, we will see you next time.